Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go a little bit more into depth about the path blur tool and the spin blur tool that we can use to put this vehicle in motion, spin the tires, make them look good. So let's get started here. Right now I have on the very bottom layer, I have my sky. Then I have my pavement, which I previously blurred already, just to give a little bit of a curved motion to the pavement. I did a video previously on the path blur tool. You should check that out. There's just some adjustments right here. The drop shadow is on a separate layer, so you can see the blur through the shadow. And then I have the truck on a separate layer, and the window, and a vignette, a little bit more grading, and then a noise layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the truck layer, and here's the truck. Now I previously already made paths around the tires, the separate areas that I'm going to do with the tires individually. If you do portions of the tires individually, you will have more control. So right here, as you can see, I just kind of outlined the path of just the front tread. So what I want to do is I'm going to make that path a selection. Whoops. It looks like there's a couple different. I'm going to deselect that for a second. And I'm going to use my direct selection tool A to just select that particular one, make it a selection. And what I want to do is I'm going to click on the truck and I'm going to Control J to put that tread onto its own layer above the top. And what I want to do is I want to convert that layer to a smart object. And then what I want to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Blur Gallery, Path Blur. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. As soon as this comes up, what I like to do, because this is so computer intensive, I'm going to turn off the preview for a second until I move this around. Now the direction of the tire is going to be spinning this way, so I'm going to put my one point right about here, and then I'm going to grab this other point right about here, and I'm just going to put it alongside the actual tread in the direction of what the actual spin would be. And I'm going to use right about here. I'll zoom in a little bit tighter so we can see, and I'm just going to move this a little bit closer to here, and then I'm going to go right along this black tread line, so I can grab this layer right here and I can bend this. Whoops. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my start point. If I click on that point, I'll make that maybe 30. I'm going to go to my end point right here, and I'm going to make that 30 also. So it's going the same speed all the way through. And I'm going to click back on my preview, and as you can see, I've got a little bit of a blur going on there. There's not a lot to blur on this particular portion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to use that layer again, or that path again, make a selection from it, and then I'm going to put a layer mask on that particular blur. And as you can see, I've got a little bit of funk going on down here. So I'm going to, with that layer mask, I'm going to just get rid of it, because if I turn off and on this layer, I still have the rest of the tire there. I must have, when I did the path, got a little bit of the ground in there, which is causing that light area to come in. So on my layer mask, I'm just gonna paint with black as my foreground color. I'm gonna click off my transfer, make that 100%, make a little smaller brush, and I'm just gonna get rid of that little area. Okay, and I'm gonna label this front tread. What I think I'll do right now too is, just so this doesn't get really confusing, is I'm gonna put a folder here, and I'm gonna label this wheel spins. Click OK. Once I get a wheel spin done, I'll just put it inside that folder so it doesn't get confusing. Click back on my truck layer. Now what I want to do is I want to take my front wheel sidewall. What I did was just path all the way around the actual sidewall of the tire. What I want to do is I want to make that a selection. Control J, or Command J on a Mac, I believe. We're going to put that layer, that selection, on a separate layer, as you can see above the tread. We're going to convert that to a smart object, and then we are going to go into Filter, Blur Gallery. We're going to go to the Spin Blur. We'll zoom out a little bit. We're going to click off on the preview for a sec, and we're just going to kind of position this. Now if you click somewhere outside this little dot areas, you'll get these arrows, which you can make it a little bit smaller. And then if you get close to this, you get these two arrows going up and down like this, like a rotate. If you push, you can use this to shape the tire. And get in a little bit closer. And you can use this to spin this way, kind of go back. We're just going to kind of position this so it kind of goes to the shape of the tire. We want to make sure the whole tire is included, the whole sidewall. So I'm going to just go back to here. And this thing can be touchy. And maybe shape it just a little bit better. Now if I click on the Alt here, I can move this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of put it more towards the center of the rim here. And then I'm going to click on Preview. Just kind of see how that looks. Now, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, there's a little bit of funkiness in the blur, and it looks like it's going a little too fast for me. So I'm going to dial this back down. We'll try 11. Maybe, yeah, 11 looks good. Let's click OK. Now, if I click on and off this layer, you can tell because this layer is on top, you can see that my wheel blur is going into this little black portion of the fender. There, and probably here, a little bit down here. And that's why we end up using our path for the actual wall, sidewall. We're going to make a selection with that again, and then on that particular layer we're going to put the layer mask around it, which will get rid of all that blur that was going into the side of this fender wall. The blur is more or less being contained within the mask. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that layer inside the wheel spins. And I'm going to label that front sidewall. Okay, I'm going to turn that off for a second, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. When wheels are spinning, these should be more of almost an exact line in a sense, and because of the fact that we're trying to blur a couple different things at once, you can see that the rim goes on the outside. It's not a straight line like it should be if you're actually doing a motion rig on a vehicle with a camera. So I'm going to turn that off for a second, and I'm going to go back to the truck layer. Close this for a second. Whoops. Close my wheel spins. Click on the truck. And I also have another path for just the rim. So I'm going to click my A, select that path, make a selection. I'm going to click on my truck, Control J, put that selection on another layer. I'm going to convert that to a smart object. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Spin Blur, and immediately I'm just going to turn off the preview so I can move this into place. I get the arrows right here so I can shrink. And kind of move it into place. And I'm going to kind of give it an oval shape there. Around the rim. I'll leave a little bit and kind of position it a little bit better. Also, there's these dots right here, which will make the spin a little bit more and a little bit less towards the inside or the outside. I like to kind of keep these for wheel spins. I like to kind of keep them a little bit more towards the outside, and I'm going to click on my Alt and just move this just a little bit more towards the center of the actual rim. I'm going to click on my preview, take a look at it. Now I think I went to 11 or 10. And let's try maybe 9. Okay. I'm going to click OK. Now what I want to do is I'm going to put this inside my wheel spins on top of the previous one. And I'm going to use my path from here, select it, make a selection, put a layer mask around it. Now as you can see, now that I turn this on and off, I've got a little sharper edge around my actual rim as opposed to being blurry. So it kind of helps out the way a rig shot would actually be. Okay, let's do this. We're gonna click on these and we're gonna put these into a folder, and this is gonna be the front tire. Now we'll click back on the truck. We'll zoom in a little bit. I made the paths for the rear treads. I'm going to click on A for the one tread. Make a selection. Control J, put it on a separate layer. As you can see, if I alt click on my eyeball here, the layer is by itself. Convert it to a smart object. Go to filter, path blur. I'm going to click off on my preview, ready to start, till I can move this into place. I'll grab one end, put it here. The other end will go down here. And when I click on the outside of this here, it does give you this little circle, which is, if you notice, I can adjust the endpoint speed here. I just think it gets a little confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to put this to 30 endpoint. I'm going to click on this endpoint. I'm going to make that 30 also. And with this point right here, I'm going to follow a tread line, which, let's do this one. And you can click in this and add extra points if you need to. And we're going to go back to this right here. Sometimes adding more points is going to help you actually. And add another point there. And I'm going to click my preview. Just kind of see what I did here. Maybe we put just another one right around the outside edge of this to see how this works. Click a point here. This can get kind of tricky, so I'm gonna just kind of play with it to see if I can make it a little bit better. Just right along the edge. Sometimes you may need two paths. Now the end point, I'm going to make that 30 once again. And then I'm going to make this 30. See if I like it or not. Now if I click on the preview, maybe we give it just a little bit more blur. I'm seeing that down here. I want this these little tread marks to kind of go away. So let's click on the endpoint here and let's make that 40. And let's make this 40. Make that one 40. And then make this one 40. So I believe all of them are 40 now. And let's click on the preview. And it looks like we're getting a little bit better. What I can do too is I can just go to the speed dial and I can maybe just give it just a little bit more speed. Sometimes this is a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to give it just a little bit more speed. See if we can't blur that just a little bit more. That looks a little bit better. Let's click OK. As you can see up here, we've got a little bit of a little area that looks a little funky. What we can do there is let's try this. The rear tread, I'm going to click on my layer mask. Click A, select that particular path. Make a selection. Put a layer mask around it. That way, as you can see, if I disable the layer mask, hold shift when you click on the mask, you can see this area where the tire that's on a separate layer is blurring into our fender. That's why we put the layer mask back on, so that'll hide that blur portion of the tire. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off for a second, and well, I guess that doesn't look too bad. We could, in a sense, make another little path around this area, put this on another layer, and then put it on top of this particular layer and just paint this back through, just to break down this area, just to get a little bit better blur. And plus the fact that there's highlights like this on top of it, it gets kind of confusing. You may have to just paint it a little bit. But let's go on to the next tread. So the rear tread, I'm going to click on my paths again, click A, select that path, make a selection. I'm going to close this for a second. Let's put this inside here. Click back on my layer, Control J, put that selection on a new layer, convert to Smart Object, Filter, Blur, Path Blur. You can try to use the spin blur on this. It depends on what you're actually trying to blur, but for these treads you could use the spin blur tool also. I find that I have better luck using the path blur tool. Zoom in a little bit. Let's put this right now, let's just start that out at 40. 40. Hit enter. Click this one. Let's follow this tread line around. I'll click another spot right here and kind of move this that way. Whoops. Put another point. Just trying to get that as smooth as possible so it's going in a straight line. And I'm going to click on my preview. And let's click one more. Let's click another point here. Click and drag. Stop it. Let's make that 40. Make the endpoint 40. And let's click OK. You can definitely tell that the way the light's hitting the tire there, it is causing a little bit of funkiness. So let's try something on this particular tire. Let's close this one, or turn this layer off for right now. Let's click back on the truck. And we'll click back on the rear tread. I'm going to click A, select that, make a selection from it, Control J to put it on a new layer. We're just going to try it again. Make it a smart object. And let's try the spin blur on this particular tread. I'm going to click off preview so I'm not getting my wheels spinning. Click out here, size it down. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to mimic the actual tread line with the edge of this. I've yet to try this way. It may work, it may not. Sometimes a little trial and error. Let's click back this way. And looks like we need to go bigger. And I'm assuming I'm going to need to be on the inside here. The center should probably be all the way over here. Then we'll move just a little bit more. And maybe we make this just a little bit bigger. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. Because I've yet to try this way. Let's click preview and just kind of take a look, see what's going on. Doesn't look so good. So I'm just going to click cancel. I'm going to throw that layer away. I'm going to click back on this layer. I'm going to put my layer mask. Select it. Selection. Here's my layer. I'm going to put the layer mask on it. And I'm going to label that rear tread. And let's put that inside our wheel spins. So if I click on this, what I could say you could possibly do right here is let's put a new folder and let's hold Alt, we'll move our layer mask into there. I'm gonna put this into the group. So right now, everything is inside this particular folder, and I'm gonna label this rear tread. Now, I'm just going to put an extra layer above that, and I'm just going to kind of use my, whatever I can to fill in this area. We're not going to do it on this one. I don't want to take the time, but basically what we could do is we could go in here and we could use our brush tool. And I'm going to click on my transfer, and I'm going to dial back about maybe 30. And I'm going to sample that color right there, and I'm just going to paint the tread. Same here. I'm just trying to follow where it actually is. And fill it in here. And once again, fill it in right here. I'm going to sample this color right here, and I want to fill in this little highlight. Maybe just kind of paint just a little bit just to darken it. Just make it a little bit smoother. And same kind of color right there, just kind of get in a little bit closer. Maybe you'll use it just a little bit darker. Just kind of blend it a little bit with your paintbrush. And let's darken that area right there. Make that all nice and clean. And a little bit darker right there. Okay. We also have a little bit going on down here if we off and on the layer. We've got a little, when I made the actual path around here, if you include a little bit of this white foreground into this, you may get a little bit of halated area there. So if I off and on this, I'm going to click on my layer mask. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit my B, my brush tool. Paint with black because we want to get rid of the layer, or start painting into the mask, get rid of this. Okay. So we kind of get two of the treads blurring back here. Now what I want to do is click back on my truck again. Now I have the rear sidewall and the front. Yeah, this one right here, path. Click on my make a selection. Control J. Put that selection on a separate layer. Convert to a smart object. Go to filter, blur, spin blur. I'm automatically going to click off my preview so it doesn't sit there and spin. I'm going to move it. Start making it smaller. Kind of give a little bit of the shape of the tire. And wait for those to come in so we can squish it. Kind of center it. Let's squish it a little bit more. I find that the more you make this shape the same outside as this, the better off you're going to be. I'm going to click on my preview and just take a look at it. I think maybe we have to move our center just a little bit to the side. Let's dial it back to about 11 or 10. Feels like it's going just a little too fast. And maybe just a little bit more. Let's try 9 again. I can't remember if we used 9 or 10 on the actual front sidewall or not. That feels like it's going to be pretty good. Let's click OK. We'll go back here, click on our path, make it a selection, put the layer mask on, and let's put that inside our wheel spins. I'm going to turn these off for a second. I believe I have the rim padded out. Yes, I do. Let's make a selection from that. Control J. Put it on a separate layer. Convert to a smart object. Filter. Spin blur. Click off preview. Move it to the front rim, size it down once you get these 2 arrows. And let's click preview, just take a look. And that's on 15 right now. Let's dial that back just a little bit. Anytime you look at a real motion rig shot with automotive photography, the center of the rim is going to be spinning a lot less than the outside. So sometimes I like to tone this down just a little bit, but enough to give it enough blur so that it looks like it's actually, it's kind of a visual thing, but you just got to kind of keep looking at it. If it doesn't look like it's spinning enough, then maybe it doesn't look like the truck's driving fast enough. Let's click OK. Let's put front rim. We'll highlight that path, make a selection, put the mask on. We'll label that rear front rim. And we're going to put that on top of the other. Turn everything on. So you can see I've got the we'll zoom in a little bit more so we can get in a little bit tighter. There's our layer mask for the rim that we just did. And it looks a little smoother. Not a big difference. Is it going to be totally noticeable? Probably not. All depends on how technical you want to get. Alright. Let's close this for a second so we can go back to the truck. And we had the rear rim path already made. Make a selection. Control J. and convert it to a smart object, and spin blur. Click off on the preview. Let's find our tool and move it into place. Usually when I'm working on these types of images, I'm working in 16-bit, and I tell you, it really can make a strain on your computer. And I've got a pretty decent computer, and it's still... Here we go. Let's make that shape the way we want it. And I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard, just kind of move things around a little bit too. Let's hit the preview button and see what that looks like. And I think we went to, what did we go, 12 on the front? Sometimes good to write that down, that way you got the same amount of spin. I'm going to click OK. Now, I should have did the sidewall first, but seems how we have it here. We'll click on the rim again, put a layer mask around it, and we need to do the last sidewall. Command J. In this rim, spin will be underneath this one, so the layer stacking order is correct right now. So we do have, I alt click on the eyeball, I can see I just have that one on a separate layer. We'll make that convert it to a smart object again, and we'll go to filter, blur, spin blur, click off on the preview for a second, move it into place. Let's click on our arrow right there. And once we get those arrows, we can squish it. And we can maybe make it a little smaller. And let's click on the preview, take a look at it. Just looking at the treads themselves, I can move this around just a little and see if I can get the treads so that they look like they're actually spinning in the right area. So I'm going to go back this way just a little. Maybe I try moving the center just a little bit this way. I'm going to wait and take a look at this for a second. Because this one right here looks like it's following the lines a little bit better. This one does not. So let's squish this down maybe just a little bit more. Maybe we squish together. We need to get a little bit more oval shape. Once again, trying to follow the line of the outside of the tire. Maybe a little more. tough one. I'm going to dial it back just a little bit to maybe about 12. See if that doesn't help just a little bit. I'll put this edge just a little bit closer, see what that does. That looks a little worse. And that looks about the same as the front rear. So let's click OK. And now we have the rim right here on top. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to the layer we were just doing. Rear sidewall. Make a selection. Put the mask on it so that the blur is contained within the actual mask. And we will put these two. I can shift click, highlight, highlight both layers. Put them inside the wheel spin. Alright. So there we go. All of our wheels are spinning. We got our background spinning. We've got a driving shot, and that's it for today's tutorial. If you like my videos, please subscribe so you can check out. I'm going to be making more, especially on automotive. So until next time, we'll see you.